I've never heard this church this quiet. Is everything okay? Is everybody all right? You all right? Yeah. For those that are visiting from the north side, this is 79th Street, okay? So leave all that north side stuff alone. This is the 9. You here at the 9 now, okay? Thank you. While they're finishing up the collection, I'm going to bring up, everybody knows him from all over Chicago. He sings, he's everywhere. He's nothing but positivity in our schools and with our young people and with businesses, in particular black businesses all over Chicago. Please welcome Zion Ali.
Yo, what's up? It's Black History Month. Y'all look so amazing. Awesome. I'm going to sing a song with y'all. So I'm not going to do it by myself. It's not a me thing. It's a we thing. It's not a me thing. It's a what? So, Sam, do the thing. Okay, groovy. I don't know if y'all know this song. Chris Brown wrote it, right? I'm just playing with y'all. Don't hurt me. Y'all didn't like that joke. Sam Cooke. Y'all got this. I think this whole side got this. Right on? Y'all ready? I was born by the river. Somebody sing it with me. Come on. In a little tent. And oh, just like the river I've been running ever since. Sing it. It's been a long, but I know a change gonna come. Oh, yes it will. I've been thinking for myself for a while. It's been too hard living, but I'm afraid to die. 'Cause we don't know what's up there beyond those skies. You sing it. It's been a, come on, but I know, a change gonna come. Oh, yes it will. It's so crazy 'cause this what happened last week. So I go to the movies, then I go downtown, and all I keep hearing is, boy, what? Somebody know? Don't hang around. It's been a, y'all sound so good. Y'all might as well be the choir. But I know, come on, a change gonna come. Oh, yes it will. Oh, oh, yeah. Come on. So I go. This is my brother right here, right on? And I say 3 words to my brother. What do I say? Somebody help me. Y'all sound so good. Come on. And guess what? Then he winds up knocking me. Where? Somebody know where? Back down on my knees. Oh, now there's been times when I thought I wasn't gonna last too long, but right now I feel like we're able, yeah, to what? To carry on. Look at somebody you don't know and sing it. Uncomfortable eye contact. Y'all got it. But I know a change gonna come. Oh, make some noise because you made the change. Right on, make some noise. 2026. I appreciate y'all. Thank you so much. I'm Zion Ali. Appreciate you.
Can the change come quick? First of all, I see the Reverend Bishop Jeanette Wilson from Rainbow Push. They got her out of the home tonight, and it's so good to have you here with us, Reverend Jeanette. And please welcome my pastor, the best pastor there ever was, Reverend Jeremiah Wright. It's my honor to introduce tonight's moderator, a leader whose life's work reflects a deep and unwavering commitment to Black excellence, institutional strength, and courageous public dialogue. Rufus Williams. Go ahead. Rufus is a financial strategist, an entrepreneur, and civic leader whose career bridges corporate leadership and community accountability. He's a principal at J Company Strategies and previously served as managing director at Loop Wealth at Loop Capital. Earlier in his career, he was the chief financial officer of Harpo Incorporated, Oprah Winfrey's multimedia company, helping steward one of the most influential Black-owned enterprises in modern media. He also founded and served as CEO of Olympus LLC, a boutique financial management firm representing professional athletes and entertainers. But his leadership is not confined to business. Rufus is a former president of the Chicago Board of Education and previously served as CEO of BBF Family Services, where he led efforts focused on strengthening Black families and developing young Black men. He has served on the board of Whitney Young Magnet School, of which the principal is here tonight, Principal Ricky Harris. Y'all know him as a principal. He's the head of the dance ministry here at St. Sabina. That's his real job. They pay him at Whitney. Rufus is also a trusted media voice, host of the Rufus Williams Show on WVON 1690 AM. And, you know, no shade on DL, but could we get you back on at 6 o'clock in the morning instead of 7? Because that's the time I go on to listen to you in the beginning. So could we get Rufus back on at 6 instead of 7? I love DL, but not at 6 o'clock in the morning. But he is also the creator of his story and Bound and Woven on VON TV, platform dedicated to elevating Black thought, culture, and leadership. Tonight, Rufus joins Joanne Reid, not simply as a moderator, but as a fellow Black public voice, someone who understands the intersection of finance, education, media, and civic power. Together, they will engage in a dialogue rooted in truth, accountability, and the ongoing work of strengthening our communities and our democracy. And before I bring Rufus up, let me just say, Joy, thank you for your voice. Thank you for your courage. Thank you for your boldness. And in a day when so much leadership in this government is so weak, and I'm talking about the Democrats now, because the Republicans are just evil, but they're so weak, thank God for your voice and for your strength. Please get to your feet and welcome with me our moderator tonight, my friend, my brother, Rufus Williams.
Thank you all. A standing ovation before we get started means we got to really get something done here tonight. Father, thank you so much for that introduction. I couldn't have written it better myself. I am so grateful to be here, but let's be honest. We are not in a normal political season. We are in a moment where truth is negotiable, where journalists are labeled enemies, where Black history is treated like a threat, where dehumanizing imagery aimed at Black leaders circulates with strategic intent, where white supremacist rhetoric is not whispered, it's repackaged. And when that happens, history tells us something important. This isn't chaos, this is backlash. Backlash to demographic change, backlash to expanded voting access, backlash to the presence of Black leadership at the highest levels of power. So tonight is not about partisanship, it's about power. Who controls the narrative? Who controls the vote? Who controls memory? and what happens when those controls are challenged. Joy-Ann Reid has spent years navigating the front lines of this moment in media, in politics, and in the broader culture fight over truth. She's a journalist, an author, a documentary film producer, and social and political commentator. She's the former host of The Reid Report, AM Joy, and two-time NAACP award-winning and Emmy-nominated nightly news program, The Reid Out, on MSNBC. Her latest project, The Joy Reid Show, airs on YouTube and on all podcast platforms. Joy has written 4 books, including 2 New York Times bestsellers, Medgar and Merle, The Love Story That Awakened America, which landed at #1 on the Times list and won the 2025 NAACP Image Award in the biography category, and The Man Who Sold America, which spent 4 weeks on the Times bestseller list, as well as Fracture, Barack Obama, the Clintons, and the Racial Divide, and the Forward to Kamala Harris sections from the official White House photography. A 1991 Harvard graduate, everybody can't get into Southern University, so she had to go to Harvard. A 1991 Harvard graduate with a documentary film concentration, she has worked in talk radio for Radio 1 as the managing editor of thegrio.com and as a political operative for America Coming Together in 2004 and the 2008 Barack Obama presidential campaign. She is a proud member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. And she and her husband, Jason, co-own the production company Image Lab Media Group, which produces The Joy Reid Show and an upcoming Medgar Evers documentary. They have 4 adult children. Winnie is here with us tonight. One of her daughters is here this evening. Tonight, we are not here for safe answers. We're here for clarity. Please join me in welcoming Joy-Ann Reid.
Thank you.
Hi, Joy.
Wow, y'all gonna make me fly out here every Sunday to go to service. Look what y'all done did.
No better place to be, no better place to come. I know everyone heard Joy and I talk earlier this week because you listened to my show on WVON from 7 to 9 a.m. every weekday morning. And she was on with me on Monday, and I tried then to talk about things that we wouldn't talk about tonight, although some things are so significant that we have to cover them again. Today, your friend Don Lemon was in court. He was in court along with Georgia Ford and other journalists who had been at an event in St. Paul where they were arrested for covering the news. What were your thoughts about today and the whole situation around Don Lemon?
Well, first, I just want to begin by saying thank you. God is good, right? All the time, God is good. It is just such a blessing and an honor to be here. Father Pfleger is such a legend and just such an incredible spiritual presence and a voice of justice and, right? Such an honorable, wonderful man. And let me tell you, every time I'm in the room with the great Jeremiah Wright, I remind him that the first time we met, I said, "You're now my best friend, right?" And he said, "Yes." So he may not have remembered tonight, but he's my bestie. I love that man. He is so brilliant, and I think that, you know, we have to honor. I wrote this book, Medgar and Merle, to try to honor Medgar Evers because he's like a hidden figure. People didn't give him enough honor. I think that Reverend Wright does not get the honor that he deserves in this country, and I think we belittle ourselves as a nation when we don't honor men like that. So, and you, my good brother, it was so great to meet you. It's just such an honor to be with you in person. It's great to meet you in person.
No, the honor is to be with you. And as you say that, I think we should, in the moment, really appreciate these two men that you pointed out.
Yes.
Father Pfleger Reverend Wright, everybody doesn't get to be in the presence of men like this.
That's right.
And this is truly something special.
And also just to big up Reverend Jackson, and give him as well. I had the opportunity to see him at the Democratic National Convention and just to hold his hand and just let him know how much I love and appreciate him. We have, our great men are in their season when we need to get their stories and we need to appreciate them and give them their flowers now. What we don't want, Miss Murley is as well. She's 93 years young and feisty, and listen, don't mess with her. But we need to appreciate our legends, our living legends, as they are attempting to be erased from history. So I'll start by saying that, and just, it's such a blessing to be in this beautiful, incredible church. And so, yes, Don did, he went in and he gave his plea. This is, it is a ridiculous case. I'm not a lawyer, but I know enough to be able to read the Constitution. Thank God it's in plain English. And, the First Amendment makes it very clear that journalism is protected. And what they're charging Don Lemon and Georgia Ford, they're the two journalists. The other 7 people include a 21-year-old college student whose crime was driving Don around because he was the Cheney, right? If you think of Goodman, Schwerner, and Cheney, Goodman and Schwerner came from the north. And when they went to Mississippi, they needed a local person to get them to get to know where to go, who to talk to. Cheney was basically their guide. And this young man was simply being a guide, not to a Goodman or a Schwerner, but to a journalist who was covering the Goodman and Schwerners. And so, prosecuting Don in Georgia would be like prosecuting the men who took the pictures of John Lewis on the Edmund Pettus Bridge, simply for being there when John Lewis and those other marchers went across the Edmund Pettus Bridge. It's that illogical. So it's a case that cannot be won, but as Don said, the point is not for them to win the case. The point is for them to create the spectacle, and the process is the punishment, as he said. Making him be booked like a criminal, making him give a plea like a criminal, the humiliation of that, which they think is going to bring him down, that's the point. They want to bring him low because Trump was brought low, because Trump had to give a plea in a criminal case, because Trump had to take a mug shot and have the indignity of going to trial and had the indignity of becoming a felon. So they want to visit that same indignity on people Trump hates. And Trump hates Don Lemon. And so he's decided to target him because he's been unsuccessful in demanding that Pam Bondi, his most corrupt attorney general, she's the picture of corruption, and she has attempted to prosecute a string of other people, and courts have said no. Lisa Cook, no. Tish James, who was the attorney general of New York, no. She wants to prosecute Jack Smith and James Comey and courts keep rejecting her, and her own prosecutors keep quitting because they see the absurdity of it. And so you can always find a grand jury. I've sat on a grand jury. They will indict a ham sandwich, right? And you can find she fished for a grand jury and got these indictments. But the point for her is what she thinks is the humiliation, and also to create fear among people like me and other journalists to say, if you cover these protests, if you give them light and attention, and you nationalize them by putting your cameras on them, you might go to prison. They want to make people pause and step back and cause these protests to happen in the dark of night with no one watching.
Can't help but notice all of the people that you mentioned are black. Does race have anything to do with this?
Of course. I mean, this is an administration. Today, there was a gentleman who was up for a State Department position who believes in the Great Replacement theory and that white people are the true victims of civil rights violations and things like that. And he's tweeted about it. And so he's probably not going to get through because he's just so absurd that they can't get him through. But this whole administration is white supremacist, and they're white nationalists. And I don't say that as a pejorative. I don't even think they'd be insulted by me saying that, to be honest, because what they're doing functionally is they're saying we need to recenter white people in American history and in the American experience. And anyone who is not white should not be lionized as a hero. Medgar Evers should not be featured in a separate and important way. The Buffalo Soldiers, no one should be featured or centered in American history other than white men, right? And so, but the problem with that is that sometimes when you are in a white nationalist bubble, it means that you don't actually talk to any black people or any non-white people. So they assumed, because in their bubble, they imagined that when Black Lives Matter, when those marches happened after George Floyd, in their mind, black people rioted. Because in their stilted media they watch on Fox, they told them black people rioted. So they assumed that when they started this aggressive enforcement of immigration, and they put masked, armed men in the streets and started brutalizing people, it would be black people they were brutalizing, because black people would go out in the streets and march and maybe even riot. But a funny thing happened when they started deploying ICE. The black people who felt rejected by their brothers and sisters when Kamala Harris put herself forward for the presidency were moisturized, relaxed, and at home, and saying to their white brothers and sisters, it is your turn to step forward. And you should face this, you should be in the streets, because this is your country too. And we keep trying to be the conscience of this country, and we keep getting killed and brutalized and beaten. And now we'd like to give you an opportunity to redeem the soul of your nation. So we'll be watching, we'll be posting, we're paying attention, but we won't be there. And so they wound up facing, and to their amazing credit, thousands and thousands of the spiciest spicy white people that have ever eaten the seasoned version of dinner. They were spicy. And so the spicy white folks were out there full chest for justice. And so they wound up with only white people to brutalize and brown people to steal and black bodies to steal. And it was white people who were the primary guardians of their neighbors who were black and brown. And so we wound up with 2 dead young white people, Renee Nicole Good and Alex Preddy. And that came after, of course, a black man was killed, Keith Porter. But of course, that's a black man, so it didn't get the same attention. It was an off-duty ICE agent, but ICE had been killing brown people too. There are about, 5 or 6 Latinos they've also killed. But when these 2 white people got killed, we had a Goodman Schwerner moment when the whole country said, wait a minute. You're killing white people. If you would kill an ICU nurse and a mother of 3, this has gone too far. So I think their intention was for it to be black people in the streets that they could harm, and that would be the protesters. But since they don't know enough black people, they had no one to ask but Candace, and she really can't tell you anything. Sorry. I could have asked Nikki too, but she doesn't know. She doesn't know either.
She's not ready yet. So we talked about this earlier in the week. We are now in authoritarianism, full out. There was, when they were stronger and more, the Washington Post had a byline that said, democracy dies in darkness. When we think about what has happened to the media, Washington Post, New York Times, LA Times, you call it, it begs the question of whether or not journalism is rising to this moment. Is it, or is it actually shrinking?
I think journalists are rising to this moment. I think Don Lemon is rising to this moment. I think Georgia Fort is rising to this moment. I think individual journalists who care about the craft are still doing great work, even at the Washington Post, even at CBS News. I think people who are determined to be great journalists and great First Amendment protectors will do their work, even if they're in a bad situation. I think they're great people at the artist formerly known as MSNBC who are doing great work. And so I think journalists are doing what they can, but the problem is structurally, and this was the challenge I had when I was working in corporate media is not built to fight fascism because it's not built to accept that fascism is happening. It wants to turn fascism into outre politics and to say this is just politics of a different sort. It didn't want to admit, when Mehdi Hassan and I and Dean Obeidallah and other journalists of color were screaming, hey guys, these people are fascists in 2015, 2016, and saying, hey, if you let these people take over, they intend to do fascism. And we were called hysterical and that we were being extremists and that we were partisan. But like, no, this isn't partisan. The Democrats were fascists for quite a long time. The ideology of right-wing fascism has lived in both parties at one time or another. They just moved into another party, but that's still a compulsion among the wealthy elite who crave the original condition of this country, which was a slave system, a chattel system, and who are always fighting to get back there. That's just all fascism is. So I think the media is so behind the curve. And then on top of it, the incentive structures are all wrong because these companies are not primarily journalistic endeavors. They are newspapers or TV news networks that are owned by a corporation whose primary interest is not truth or facts or journalism. Their primary interest is lots of other things. The company I work for also has theme parks. The NBC is part of a giant corporation with a lot of businesses. Paramount, CBS has lots of businesses, not just the news division. And these big businesses and the oligarchs that own them, they want to do business with the administration, with the regime. So they certainly don't want their newsroom messing up their money by being anti-regime and being perceived as anti-regime. So they're all bending the knee, one after another, after another, after another, paying bribes to the President of the United States, unheard of, in cases they could have won, ABC, CBS, just writing him a check. Jeff Bezos, who owns the Washington Post, but also Amazon, and who's in a position to just write a $40 million check to the First Lady of the United States and put a man in the Epstein files in place to direct the film. Like it's almost bizarro world, but what's happened is the media is so compromised by the fact that oligarchs own it. And the oligarchs are actually okay with fascism as long as in their mind they can make more money.
And then there's us. And so the next challenge, this is my last media question, I think, but given those things, how should Black audiences think about media consumption right now? Where is it that we should get our information, and what is it that we should trust?
So, I always have said that the thing to do when it comes to media, even before we were in full fascism, is you really have to be a great curator of your media diet. The reason that so many on the right are the way they are is their media diet is very limited. They pretty much just watch Fox. Or they, when they get bored of Fox, they turn to Newsmax, or they turn to, the OAN network, but they stay in a bubble that says, I only want to hear what makes me feel good, and therefore that's what I watch. Whereas if you look at the Pew Research studies, et cetera, people who are more to the middle or the left will tend to watch a broader range of news. They'll watch a little Fox just to see what they're saying. They'll listen to NPR. They'll read the New York Times. They'll watch, Ms. Now. She's Ms. Now, so I'm going to honor her new name. They'll watch CNN. They'll watch lots of different things. And so they have a little bit more media literacy. And so I think what you have to do is you just have to be a good curator. There's still some quality journalism you can get at Washington Post, New York Times, but independent media just happens to be the one place, if you pick trusted journalists in independent media, where you can get unfiltered truth. And sometimes what you need is not just a recount of the story or what the administration said. One of the things that's frustrating about working in mainstream media is you eat a lot on what did the president say. So a lot of your time is spent recounting what he said. But sometimes, well, who cares what he said? What did he do? And what is he doing? And they're not built to analyze that. So I think independent media is having a moment, not just because people love Don Lemon or, they like me, or I think it's because people are hungry to get the unvarnished truth. There's a reason Zateo is doing great, because people are saying, I don't want that filter anymore. I want to actually know what's happening.
Yeah, we like Don Lemon. We love you.
Thank you.
So when we think about this, and this is important because it's the information that shapes perception, no matter what and no matter where. And if that's the case, then we know that elections then determine consequences. We're now at a point that we're at the midterm elections. Can you talk about what's at stake in these midterm elections for Black America?
Who in here, raise your hand if you saw Sinners? I hope everybody. We will be collecting black cards from everyone who did not raise their hand. I'm just kidding. So y'all know, like in Sinners, when they're in the club right, and they're having the party, what happens if you let somebody in the door? Everybody dies. And it doesn't matter what your intentions are. It doesn't matter if this looked like your best friend, this was your husband. You open that door and let them in, but you have to invite them in. Because vampires can't come. I know we're in the house of God, so I'm sorry to talk about the occult. Apologize to Father Flager, but he already basically, he's pretty cool, so I think he's gonna be all right. But you can't let them in the door. And I call the 2024 election the sinner's election. America invited the devil into our government. And by the devil, I don't mean Donald Trump. Because the devil, remember, if you read your Bible, you know that the devil can quote scripture. The devil is knowledgeable, right? The devil is knowledgeable. And the reason the devil is a strong opponent of God and an opponent that you have to continually face and face again is the devil has knowledge. Donald Trump is not knowledgeable. So he's not the devil, right? But Donald Trump benefits from the demonic things that the devil intends to do to America. Because the devil says, Donald, you can be rich. You never were able to be a billionaire by your own intelligence, your own intellect, your own ability. When you were just a real estate developer, you never became a billionaire because you just were really not that good at it. You made casinos go bankrupt in Atlantic City. That's actually really hard to do. That's like George W. Bush not able to find oil in Texas. I mean, George, that's all that's there. So Donald Trump is not the devil, right? So people who think he's not the devil, right? But Donald Trump, and I don't mean in a spiritual sense, I mean in a political sense, sold his soul to the devil. Because there's nothing he won't do. There's no child predator he won't protect in those files. There's no way he won't bend and break our laws and our Constitution. There's nothing he won't do. And we don't know we don't know who all he answers to, but he's definitely willing to break and destroy the country, and enrich himself in the process in a way no president has ever done. We've never seen this level of corruption. Just the DOJ alone, the level of corruption is unbelievable. So with the midterms coming up, what I will say is the problem is the vampires are already in the house. And so we're now running and scrambling and trying to find places to hide and trying to find places where we can't get got. They're in here. They're in the house. Fascism is here. It's in the house. It has taken over our country. And the one advantage we have at this point is that they're working from a written plan. Project 2025 was written down. It was created by white Christian nationalists, and they self-describe themselves as Christian nationalists, so I'm not insulting them. Russ Vought, who's now our head of office and management and budget. The men who made Project 2025 are running our government. The man who wrote How to Warp the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, now runs the Federal Communications Commission. Russ Vought wrote how to break the administrative state and fire all of the federal employees. He's now in charge of that, right? They wrote the plan, and now they're executing the plan. So what we have to do is now we have to be strategic. We need to really, really familiarize ourselves with what's in Project 2025 to see what's left that they haven't done and start to formulate strategies to combat what's left. And we need to grab what little of our democracy is left and use it to fight them with everything we got, like that young man had that music. We need to call our ancestors like that man did in Sinners. We're gonna need ancestral strength in order to push this back, because it usually takes years and decades to get rid of an autocracy once it's there. So just understand this could be a long fight, and it's not gonna be easy to extract these people. They've seeded themselves into every part of our government, and they also effectively own the Supreme Court, the majority. So we don't have a lot to work with. And then the Democrats, as Father Flaker indicated, they are like the media. They're built in this old-fashioned style where they genuinely think this is just politics. And they think if they just say the words Mamdani said and just say affordability a lot, then they'll win the elections and everything will be fine. And that's not true. Because my challenge is, let's say the Democrats do win the midterms. They're on track to win. Donald Trump is historically unpopular. He's even unpopular on immigration. He's lost ground on everything. Economy, the rent is too high. Everything is bad. Everybody's turning on him, whatever, except his base. But let's just say the Democrats win. What's their plan on how to reverse this? Do you know? Because I don't know. And I do this for a living, and you do this for a living. And if we don't know, I don't know how we can tell you guys. So I think the midterm conversation is important, but we are not even close to November yet. So I think the first thing you need to do is you need to start thinking about the spring elections. Because what we need, if you go back to our centers analogy, they needed the right army. They needed the sister who had the bones. They needed the Asian lady who had her thing. Like, they needed all these different people who had special skills to fight vampires and who knew different things. They needed the musician, they needed it. So we need to get the right team in place. And so I think you need to start looking at these midterms and really thinking about these candidates. And like, don't just think if there's a D after their name that they're worth putting on your team and making them part of your army. We need an army that is prepared to fight, because it's gonna be a fight. So I think the first thing we need to do is really look at these primary candidates and scrutinize them, and not the old way we used to, is electability. It's not about that. Zohar Mamdani was not electable. People thought there was no way this guy could get elected. He still did by record numbers, because he was offering something powerful. He was saying, I will do the unthinkable with power for you. Where's that Democrat who's saying, I will do the unthinkable? That's what Trump said. I'm gonna do the unthinkable with power for you.
For you.
For
is
you.
the important part.
That is what he did, and we need Democrats who will do that. So before I can even get to November, when there's gonna be masked men at the polls, probably intimidating folks, it's gonna be, go to vote with 10 people because you're gonna need strength. It's gonna be really scary. But before we even get there, make sure if you're gonna take the risk to go vote with those masked men, that you're going to vote for somebody that's worth putting in office.
So if you all saw Sinners and did not understand it in the way in which it's just been explained, go see it again and understand it from this lens, because it really means something about how the world works. And they're not just making up fancy stories. There's a lot to that. Thinking about the upcoming elections, it was interesting when when President Obama left office and we started looking at what was happening. There were a number of state offices that had gone to Republicans. They had won a lot of governorships. So thinking about that, are we underestimating the power of state-level offices when we think about governors and secretaries of state and attorneys general?
Oh, 100%. Like my first book, which did not become a New York Times bestseller, but it's still one of my favorite books, called Fracture, which my daughter Winsome, who's here with me today, we came out and we spent a lot of time in Chicago to do that book. It was about Barack Obama and the Clintons and sort of that divide. One of the things that came through that I actually didn't believe until I had to keep checking and rechecking my research, the Republican Party did not win the South in the 60s or the 70s or the 80s or even the 90s. They did not complete their takeover of the South until 2014. 2014. Before the 2010 midterms, the majority of black legislatures in this country were serving in majority legislatures. in 2009 when President Obama got elected. We gave that power away because what happened was turnout when Barack Obama stood for election hit a record, which in the United States is like 60%. It's pretty sad, but we're not a voting democracy. So like 60% turnout, 62, 63, 65, something in the 60s. That's great for the United States. In 2010, in that midterm, when the goal was supposed to be to now give President Obama the power in the Congress and in the states to be able to do the things he was promising he would do, the turnout dropped into the 40s. And then the Republicans started wreaking havoc. That was a census year, which meant they got to redistrict and gerrymander for a decade. That was an Armageddon election. And people just didn't turn out. All across the country, Democrats gave back Arkansas, they gave back, President Obama won North Carolina and Indiana. People forget that. He won Florida twice. And now those states are unwinnable because they've been gerrymandered away because of 2010. And then people came right back in 2012, Obama! And they were right back to the polls, back to the 60s. But by then, the Flint water crisis had been voted in because they let, Michigan went from 60 to 40, and all of a sudden you get a Republican in there, and they changed the rules, and now you're drinking dirty water in Flint. 2010 and 2014 were a disaster and a mistake. And so I think what we need to get back to is the habit of voting every election for dog catcher. Because I'll tell you what the right does. Project 2025 is an update of a thing that the Heritage Foundation has been doing since the late 80s. They do a Project 88, Project 92, Project 96. They've been doing these. It's just this is the first one they could ever enact because they had a president so unschooled and disinterested in policy that he doesn't care what they do as long as he gets crypto wealth. And as long as he gets to attack Tish James and prosecute people that, been put James Comey in jail. Like, that's all he cares about. And making incredible amounts of money for himself. So we need to vote down, the Republicans do. They got in those school boards and they ate them up.
That's where a lot of the beginning of them was, in the school boards. And the
100%.
that were there, and now we need to be doing the same thing. Let's talk about the issue of voter suppression, because we're seeing a lot of that coming through. Is it more sophisticated now than it was in previous eras, and what is it that we should be doing?
No, it's not more sophisticated. It's just more aggressive, and if anything, it's more open. The SAVE Act is the latest voter suppression attempt. It will make it so that your voting registration has to match what's on your birth certificate. A lot of seniors don't have their birth certificate. If you were born at home, you may not even have one. Only about 40%, about 35% of Americans have a passport. You'd have to present a passport as proof of citizenship or a birth certificate. If you've gotten married and changed your name, if your surname now is your husband's name rather than what's on your birth certificate, you'd have to provide additional documentation to prove you're a registered voter and a citizen. It would effectively take millions of women who are married off the rolls, which is their goal. They want to repeal the 19th Amendment. But they can't, so they're just going to make a lot of women ineligible. So it's not, it's dumb, it's knuckle drag-ish, but they're going to do it, And it's a poll tax, by the way. It means they don't reinvent the wheel, right? If you have to get an ID that you can't afford and it costs $47, you don't have $47, that's a poll tax.
And it makes a lot of difference, particularly when we start to look at our young people in the communities that don't have the money or the means to get to the DMV or any place else to get those IDs that are required.
And then look what they're going to do in the red states. Here's what they'll do. Here in Chicago, they'll probably let you get an ID. They may even make it free. Go on down to Tennessee. They're going to close that DMV at 4 o'clock. You get off at 5. They're like, sorry, it's closed. They do it's always sneaky, tricky, low down, dirty. It's never like super intelligent, but it's effective.
We've watched this gathering and othering, right? So white folks are just white folks. But then there's been identification of all these other groups of black folks, of Latinos, of immigrants, and so on, to really weaponize these divisions in America. When we start to think about that, Is there tension between black and immigrant communities? Is that organic or has that been engineered?
I think it's kind of both. I think I mean, first of all, whiteness didn't even exist until chattel slavery in the 16th century. Like, there are lots of I mean, Europe is all white people, mostly white. I mean, although the Moors did run that joint for quite a while and taught them how to bathe. And they said, here's how you don't die from dysentery. And they gave them civilization, but, you know, you're welcome. And all the white people there hated each other. They were different tribes. They were Irish, Scottish, you know, they fought each other in various wars. There were like 100 different wars. They weren't like friends, you know what I mean? The French and they didn't look at each other and say, we are white. They looked at each other and said, you're German and you're Bavarian, and they were tribal just like everybody else. But when all of these various Europeans came here and decided when the Catholic Church did an edict in 1492, same thing that launched the Age of Exploration, and they said, go out and bring back gold to Rome. And any people you find there, you can enslave them or kill them if they will not convert. You are free to roam the earth and own whatever you find. And that launches this age of exploration that ends up creating chattel slavery. They see these people and they say, we're going to enslave you, and we're going to turn you into our eternal servants. And when they started to bring that system to this country, they needed a reason to continue it, but also to keep the black servants and the white servants from teaming up, because they outnumbered them. And so this idea of whiteness was just a trick invented to keep white servants from siding with black servants. They said, well, here's the difference between them. They're like, well, we both have no shoes. You know, we're both hungry. Why are we working 7 days a week? And we're miserable. And they say, well, yeah, but you're different from them. They're like, well, how? We're both living horribly. And they said, well, you're white, so you're like us. Look at our skin. We're the same. You may have nothing. I'm going to give you nothing. You're going to continue to be poor, but you're not them. They're black, and you're white. And so this sort of catch-all of black and white has been, to me, the most powerful invention in history, because it aligns poor white people with rich white people against poor black people and poor brown people. But then you get into colonialism, where you start to say, we don't want ever again that blacks in America look at Haiti and go, hey, maybe we should do what they're doing. And they were. I mean, black people were uprising in this what's called the United States, like every week. You know, there was another uprising. But in Haiti, theirs actually completely succeeded, which terrified white, you know, what were now white people. And they're like, we can never let them look at those Caribbean blacks as brothers, even though they're literally our cousins. Everyone in New Orleans is basically Haitian, right? But they don't want you to think that way. So this whole idea of dividing Caribbean blacks and American blacks was also quite deliberate. My parents are Caribbean. When they came here in the 60s, my godmother, who's my mother's best friend, they were at NYU together, she worked at Bonwit Teller, which is now Trump Tower. It was a beautiful department store called Bonwit Teller. It was very upscale. And black people weren't allowed to work in the front. Black people could only work in the back as stock people. But my godmother, who was Jamaican, was allowed to work in the front. She had the white gloves. She could work behind the cashier's desk. She's the only black person there. But why? Because she has an accent. So she's black, but she's not our black. Right? Behind her back, she's still the N-word, but we're going to raise her status a little bit above. My godmother, I used to say my mom was Dr. King and my godmother was Malcolm X, because my mother was Guyanese because they're polite, but Jamaicans, they have no behavior. Jamaicans are just completely misbehaved. So my mother would try to negotiate with the white teachers who were discriminating against not just them, but against the black American students who felt completely disempowered in those NYU classrooms. So my mother would be like, that's not right. And my godmother would start with the bomba stuff. And she would lose it and just act crazy because she had privilege as a foreign black person. And so I think some of it has been artificially created by white people who never want. It's the reason blacks and Latinos don't get along. If you do the one-drop rule, every Latino is black. The whole of Latin America are black by the one-drop rule. But they teach them, well, you're light, and you speak Spanish, so you're not black. Even Dominicans will say, I'm not black, I'm Dominican, but you're like darker than me, you're black, you know? So these creations are artificial, but then I have to say, as a Caribbean American person, a lot of us don't help ourselves. Because, you know, my mother, when she came here as a black woman, we ended up in Denver, Colorado. There were 4 African families. We were the only Caribbean people. Everybody else was black American. And I wasn't born in Guyana, so she was like, you're not Guyanese, you're African American. It's just very clear. My family was like, you guys are African American, you're from here. So I'm culturally African American, and my mother was she had an accent till the day she died, but she never considered me to be Caribbean. And so she raised us with a deep reverence for African Americans and a deep respect for what African Americans survived and built and created. And I sometimes get on my Caribbean people, Nicki Minaj, who don't respect enough the fact that African Americans built the most powerful culture that may have ever existed. It's so powerful that when white people want to insult black people, they use the word woke, which black people made up. When they want to ban our history, they have to borrow critical race theory, which black people made up. But black culture is so powerful, it's even used in the language of white supremacy. That's like a powerful culture. Black people invented rock and roll and country music, and it's so powerful that white people are like, we need to ban you from that because we don't even want to compete with Beyonce. Kick her out of country. Because if she's in country, well, dag nabbit, she's gonna win all the awards. We have tennis. We let the black girls. What are we doing? Why do we let the Williams sisters play? Because now Coco Jones wants to be, you know? So black Americans are like freaking, to me, y'all are like the Wakanda of black people. So I was just raised to believe that. And I just think that we need more respect due given by Caribbean Americans. And also, I think you have to recognize that what Caribbean Americans dealt with was a different kind of slavery. They would just use them till they died. So they didn't have a chance to become generational. They were just dead. They would work them to death. They didn't breed them like cattle. There wasn't chattel slavery. It was vicious slavery. My godmother's people escaped into the hills, the Maroons, because it was so vicious. They just escaped in the hills, and the white people were too scared to go in the hills and get them. But yeah, so it's very different forms of enslavement. It's all horrible, but we need to respect each other's culture and know that we are on the same side. And I will say this one last thing. I know I'm very long-winded. White folks, y'all ain't had it great either. And they need to come to a recognition that when black people talk about black history and the greatness of black people, that's something that they too should look to for inspiration to get out of the hole they're in as well.
You mentioned insult in that last commentary, and this is the one thing that was just sitting so on the top of my brain, but we didn't talk about it on Monday, but it was fresh, because it was just before midnight on the 5th of February that this racist video came out with, you know, the racist video. Let's talk about that. We've seen this deeply offensive imagery, not just there, but we've seen it in all these other times targeting our black leaders. What does that dehumanization signify historically and looking forward? What are they doing?
I think it signifies weakness. I mean, first of all, Donald Trump sued Bill Maher because Bill Maher said that he might have been the product of an orangutan human love affair. He sued him, and Bill Maher won. So don't throw around monkey imagery if you've been sued and couldn't prove that you're not the son of an orangutan. It's just probably, you're just gonna attract the jokes. So that's number one. Barack Obama lives in Donald Trump's head. He's jealous of him. He's envious of him. He wants his Nobel Peace Prize that Obama got. He's just envious. That's just envy. It's the same way to me. White replacement theory is hilarious to me because I'm like, when people are like, white replacement theory, they're trying to, the Jews are bringing all the brown people over here to replace us. And I'm like, really, how many Jews? Well, really just the Soroses. So I'm saying, okay, so let me just get this straight. Mr. White Supremacist. You're saying just George Soros, who's like 80, by himself, all he has to do to destroy all of you is just bring in some brown construction workers? That's all it takes? Because if you were superior, you'd probably be okay if those construction workers came over. If you're saying that your entire civilization is so fragile that it can be destroyed by a couple of the Jews, just bringing in some Latino construction workers and restaurant workers and the lady who sells arepas by the side of the road. So when those people come in and Ilhan Omar, oh my God, Ilhan Omar, like 30,000 Somalis, that's gonna destroy your civilization? That means your civilization was probably pretty weak. So I think it just signifies weakness. I find those kinds of insults so silly because it's just an expression of terror and fear and demographic panic. And this fear that these brown and black people are gonna somehow subsume you and destroy you, it means you aren't really confident in yourself and in your people.
But we find ourselves in this moment and we think about Project 2025 and we think about this whole ideology of white supremacy. Is that fringe or is that now embedded in our political system, and how do we work around that?
It's embedded. I mean, and again, and this is not to just, I'm barely a Democrat at this point, so it's not even partisan. The Democrats were white supremacists for a really long time. The Klan were Democrats. I mean, I love it when I used to be on Twitter, when it was called Twitter, and I would fight with people, they would always try to do the zinger, the Democrats created the Klan. I'm like, yeah, what else? What else you got? Yeah, they were the Klan. We know that, They just switch parties. And I don't even remember your question.
Well, my question was whether or not, what do we do about the fact that it has now been institutionalized?
Yeah, it's institutionalized. So now white supremacy is the official policy of the United States government. Did you see the EEOC? If you're a white man and you feel you've been discriminated against, it's like, this is silly. It seems like Saturday Night Live skit, like really? But it is now their official policy. Their official policy, the Department of Labor is putting out these weird ads that show all these sort of white cartoon men that look like, sort of from the 1930s. It kind of looks like these old communist ads or the old German ads from the 30s, and saying, protect the homeland, come and work for your homeland. And this ethnic cleansing, this push for ethnic cleansing using ICE, which isn't about mass deportation. They're really just detaining them and enriching these private prisons. They're sort of mass incarcerating them, not really removing them. So what we have to do about it, we can't change the ideology of white supremacy. It's about panic. It's about fear. If you just listen to them talk, they're afraid. They feel that America is going to lose its white culture, which I'm not sure what they mean by that, right? American culture divorced from black culture, and they're like, I'm a white supremacist, now I'm gonna go get some Mexican food. You know what I mean? Like, what is American culture? It doesn't, it's an amalgam culture, it's an amalgam. So there's no way to fix those people. And I don't necessarily believe in conversion. I think conversion is a religious thing. You have to come to it on your own. But I do think what you have to do is you have to defeat those people. I don't think you can talk them out of it because it's a religion and it's an emotional thing. So I think what we have to do is what we said before, organize ourselves to find the right army to overwhelm them, kick them out of office, and never let them back in. And I'll say one more thing. The reason that we're here is that the two largest and most successful slave revolts in history were Toussaint Louverture in Haiti and the Civil War. Because the Civil War was lost. The North was going to lose had those 100,000 black men not joined up. Because the black men were much more motivated to kill Confederates. And they weren't conscripted to do it. They were really eager to do it. And that's why we have Memorial Day, because they were with abandon winning those battles. And that turned the tide of the war. And so I do consider the Civil War to be the greatest slave uprising in American history. It was the completion of many other slave uprisings, and a lot of those men had been part of them, and they were ready to fight. But then after the Civil War was over, nobody got punished. This, with malice toward none BS from Lincoln, and then he's like, I'm gonna switch to Andrew Johnson as my running mate for re-election, and then I'm gonna go to the theater. Well, that's not very smart. Like, I don't even know why he's a top 6 president. He had a great vice president, Hannibal Hamlin, who actually would have been a great president and would have actually tried to help the formerly enslaved. Instead, he's like, I need a Southerner. He gets Andrew Johnson, and then he goes to the theater. That's not smart. I think it's dumb.
Certainly not in hindsight.
No, I'm not impressed. But then afterwards, Andrew Johnson is in place to essentially let all of the Confederates off the hook. And I know we're in a house of God, but there should have been some hangings or something. What they did to John Brown, one of the most heroic white men in history, who was the first man in this country hung for treason, for freeing slaves. But so you're willing to hang John Brown, but not Robert E. Lee? And if you didn't, and more than not punish these men, they let them back into office. They let them run for office again. They let them be back in civil society. No. If we had actually had a reckoning and the South had to pay a price for what they did, they couldn't have made the Red Raiders because they'd all been in prison. They should have been in prison camps. The South should have never been allowed to get up off the mat. We didn't let Germany up until they did what we said. Or Japan had to obey before we let them get back in, and then we only let them make cars, and then we're mad at them for making cars. So we messed up. And so I think what has to happen is when this is over, and it will be over, these people will not be in power forever. They're not smart enough to stay in power forever. And they're gonna get to the last page of Project 2025 and be out of ideas. They wanna do the Handmaid's Tale, and white women have now figured out, oh, that means you are gonna lose all your rights. So white women are like, no. So they're not gonna win ultimately, but when it's over, there has to be a reckoning. I don't believe any of these people. I think Pam Bondi should be stripped of her law license, right? Kristi Noem, she couldn't even visit the indigenous sites in her own state because they were like, you can't even walk on our land, you're so awful. And they never let up on that. I think there has to be punishment. And maybe you can't punish Trump because John Roberts has said he's immune, he can rob a bank and get away with it and then it's fine. But everybody below him can go to jail. I think people have to go to jail. I think there have to be, this is the last thing I'll say is I need Democrats to say people are gonna go to jail. Like I need Democratic leadership to say, put us back in office, everyone in ICE will be unemployed. You're gonna get to know unemployment. Y'all better, I hope you can work with your hands because you're gonna be out building those homes or finding something to do with your hands because you won't have a job. All the little money you got for bonuses, you're giving it back, and we're gonna tax it on top of it, all of you. And if you committed a crime against an American citizen, prison, and more prison for you, and let people know there's gonna be a reckoning. And some people will correct themselves if they know there are gonna be consequences. But Democrats keep saying sort of vague things that they're gonna do. No, tell me what you're gonna do when you get back. When you get back, all of SNAP goes back in just the way it was. We're going to Obamacare ×3. We're going to do universal health care. And as a matter of fact, you didn't like Obamacare? Watch us work. We're about to do real universal health care. And you're going to be happy and at least you'll be healthy while you're in jail. That's why I'm not a politician.
No, but it's got to be clear what's really, the ideology that we're talking about, white supremacy, doesn't just live in speeches. It shows up in the systems. It shows up in policing. It shows up in accountability or the lack thereof. So then when we look at things like the killings of Good and Petty in Minnesota, and we think about people like, Philando Castile or others who have been killed and haven't had the same level of accountability, why does it seem like this accountability, Joanne Reid, is inconsistent?
It's inconsistent. We let the slave catchers become the police. We let the police become the Border Patrol and ICE. These things just keep morphing into worse things. We let the Red Raiders basically are no different than ICE. What's the difference? Masked men who go door to door treating people of color like animals. We keep letting them do it. And so some of this can't be reformed. I think Democrats should come in and say ICE will be abolished. We're going to end it. The Department of Homeland Security is not in the Constitution. It needs to be abolished, get rid of it, and start over. And there are big chunks of the Constitution that were just written wrong. We need to fix this country, and we don't want to go back to the status quo ante. We want to go forward to something better.
What you're saying for us to hear and for us to demand is that reform is not incremental. Reform is real, and reform is direct, and reform is now, and that's what we need.
I will respect one thing about Republicans. My father was a big-time right-wing Republican. He wasn't an American citizen, but he was a Reaganite, and my mother was a big Carter person. That's why they got divorced, and it didn't work out. Sure, we sided with Mom. Like, whatever, man. But one thing I respect about Republicans is they do know how to use power. And they're not fearful or shameful about using power. If you give them a little bit of power, they act like they're the king. Donald Trump, all you do is crack open the door for him to start acting like Vladimir Putin. And, you kind of got to respect the game. He said, I'm going to do mass deportation like nobody's ever seen. He's doing it. He talked white supremacy, and now he's enacting white supremacy, tweeting out racist things of Obama. Like, he's fearless. And again, he says, I'm going to do the unthinkable, white America, for you. And that's what people flock to him, even some black people. I'm going to do the unthinkable for you. That's all Mamdani did. Mamdani got out there and said, I'm going to make the buses free. People were like, that's unthinkable. He's like, that's why I'm going to do it. I'm going to make preschool free. They're like, well, that's unthinkable. Well, that's why I'm going to do it. Because I'm doing it for you. He won by a record number. Even Republicans, even MAGA people voted for him. Because they're like, at this point, I'm so desperate. I need someone to propose the unthinkable. Like, we're almost at Valentine's Day. Who are you going to go on a date with? The person who says, let's go to the movies, and, we can split it. Or the person who says, I may not have it, baby, but I'm going to put you on a jet and fly you to Paris. I may not have it today. And if you rock with me, give me a year. I'm going to be a mogul. I'm going to take you with me. Now, you want to date me, don't you? That's how you do it. You got to talk big, promise big. And even if you can't deliver, people will forgive you if you seem like you're trying, if you seem like you're putting your whole body on the line to try. Democrats Obama promised one really big thing, which was universal health care. And he went for it. God bless him. He was like, I'm going to try to get this universal health care. But for Joe Lieberman, he would have gotten it, and including the public option. He went for something big. He went for DACA, which was big. You got to go for something big so people will trust you with the small things and the small mistakes.
I saw a brother back there taking notes when you were talking about what to do.
Yeah, Paris. Maybe say Accra, Ghana, not Paris. We want to try to do a motherland.
We have been, as black people, beaten down, scorned, maligned, everything for so long. And now we find these situations and these systems where we pick up a paper and we hear that this government is now suing Nike because white men have been discriminated against. So when we look at these kind of things, this is just a continuum of, it just feels like just a continuum of exposure to structural issues that continue to confront us at every point when we try to get further and further ahead. I don't know whether you're a psychologist or not. I think you are. But talk about what that does to our psyche and what we need to do to continue to move forward in the face of all of these things.
Yeah, I took one semester of psychology at Harvard, so you will now get the benefit of my one semester of psychology. So I'm just a little bit different. I'm a slightly ornery person. Really? So when Nike gets sued because they discriminated against white men, I'm only looking for one answer, which is no. Nike needs to fight that lawsuit. And if instead they decide to pay out, then my thing is, Nike, run that experiment. Stop doing DEI. Don't hire any more black athletes. Don't go to LeBron. Don't go to don't look at any black athletes anymore. Just get your white athletes, and I wish you Godspeed. When Target said, we're not doing DEI, I said, run that experiment. Good luck. No, I won't be shopping there. And no one I know will be shopping there. But if the MAGAs, who really only shop at Walmart, if you think they're going to come into your Target and go buy your HGTV line of fabulous housewares, run that experiment. 'Cause I don't think they shop at Target, because they think you're communists and they only shop at Walmart. But you run that, and you know what Target is? In the toilet. They have dropped off the top 100 profitability for the first time in their entire, because they ran the experiment. So I invite any company, if you're not for diversity, equity, and inclusion, first of all, tell me which is it that you don't like, the diversity, the equity, or the inclusion. And go ahead and run the experiment. Get rid of all the women, get rid of all the gays, just have MAGA white men. Good luck.
On that note, and we talked about this the other day, but talk about where our strength is in economics and the purchasing power and how we should act and really show our power in that way.
Right, because see, what happened is, it's not like black people stopped shopping when we stopped going to Target. We just redirected our dollars somewhere else. And a lot of the places I'm seeing black folks redirecting their dollars is toward the individual black creators that were in Target. So they're enriching individual business people. Look, we did not always have access to Target. Remember, we used to be able to go in department stores and try on clothes. It didn't mean we didn't buy clothes. We would just sew clothes. We would deal with small retailers. If you all want to go backwards, it's not going to play out like you think it is. The biggest beneficiaries of integration were the U.S. economy. Because when black people stopped just eating in black restaurants and started eating at Woolworths, Woolworths did really well. Woolworths, it turned out, actually needed black dollars, and their food was crap. And actually, after a while, black folks figured, this food isn't even good. Let me go back and eat at a black restaurant in my neighborhood. This food is horrible. And so all that's going to happen is you're going to empower. We're different now. We're not our ancestors. We are our ancestors' spirit, but with technology and more money. And we're just going to redirect our spending to our own businesses. We're in self-protection mode. We're going to empower Don Lemon. We're going to empower the Joy Reid Show. We're going to empower Georgia Fort. She's got her own small company. We're going to subscribe to her. We're going to literally bury ourselves in our own community, and we're going to make our own community's entrepreneurs wealthy, successful, supported. And we've got lots of friends from outside. They're going to come in and patronize, and your old dried up businesses are going to go the way of Woolworths.
Segregate our dollars back to us.
We're going to we're going to make choices, right? I mean, that's how South Africa fell. You know, eventually South Africa was taken down economically because people said, I'm not going to spend money with you anymore. And even internally, the black South Africans, who were the majority, supported the boycotts and divestment. Israel right now is suffering not just because everyone now knows they're doing a genocide, but because people are like, I'm not going to do business with you. You know, we need to treat AIPAC that way. We said, look, we're not going to do business with you. You're trying to take out our elected officials because they don't obey a foreign government. We're not going to even support anyone you give money to. AIPAC gives money to you, I'm never going to vote for you, like ever. So the reality is it's how we change behavior among the people we know, among our kids, among our family. You change behavior by behaving differently. You don't change behavior by letting people abuse you and continue to abuse you. So we're going to say, if you're going to abuse us, you're going to lose us, and that's just the way it is.
Just the way it is. Look, I have no idea what time it is. Don't care. We're still going to talk because I got another topic that we've got to cover, which is black history. When accountability is debated, history is often debated too. Why is black history under such aggressive attack right now?
Because black history is the playbook for saving this country from them. And black people have always been at the forefront of saving this country from fascism and evil. And so if you let people learn black history, they'll learn how to survive, they'll learn how to fight, they'll learn how to resist, and it's dangerous. There's a reason that black American textbooks don't ever teach about the uprisings, because they didn't want to have that uprising vibration among African Americans who they wanted to suppress and be docile. If you want someone to be docile, you tell them that your people are always docile. This is your tradition. But if you think your tradition is uprising, I'm telling you, those Jamaican Maroons are something else. My godmother is a whole mess. She's 94 years old. You can't tell her nothing. because she's a maroon, and she would tell you every minute, if you try anything with her, I'm a maroon. We ran into the hills, and the white people were afraid to come and get us. You can't tell me nothing. When you teach somebody that their history is resistance, they become strong. And so the thing they never have wanted is Black Americans to understand your whole history is resistance. From 1619, the first day y'all got here, resistance, 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 right up until you beat their butts in the Civil War. So and then continued to resist. It was World War I and World War II veterans who formed the basis of the Civil Rights Movement, because those men came home as men. They're like, we carry guns against the Nazis. You can't be a Nazi home in my house, in my own neighborhood. I'm not going to have Nazis at home when I fought Nazis abroad. They were the men who were going and trying to go and vote, because they were like, I'm going to stand up as a man. I'm a man overseas. I'm a man here. And so the resistance learning is what they're afraid of, because now people have Black AF history, and they have Garrison Hayes and Mike Harriot and all these people who are telling you the true history, not the watered down, bland history you got in your textbooks that didn't tell you anything. Now that people really know what Black folks are capable of, the people who are doing Project 2025 are terrified, not just that Black people will learn it, but that white people will learn it, and that their white children will come to have respect for Black culture and Black people, and will see Black people as their equals and see them as their brothers. And then you're going to have a majority against it. And we're fighting a small minority of people who only look like a majority because they're getting people in the majority, for now, white Americans, they're getting most of them to stick with them. The minute those people break and start sticking with us, they're done. So, and they know that. And so they're much more afraid of their children learning that history than our children learning it, but they want to make sure our children don't know, so we can't tell them.
So when we think about Black history, is it a celebration or is it resistance?
I think it's both. I think it's an absolute celebration. And you can't move forward without knowing where you've been, without knowing, who you are. History, used to be all oral in the African tradition. It's oral because you're trying to build a human of a child. And you want that child to be full of their ancestors. And they can't know their ancestors unless you tell them who they are. And so we have to become ancestral people. We already are kind of a people who know there's something about spirit. It's the reason we love to be in church, and we need that spiritual music, and it moves us in a certain way. And we need to develop an ancestral strength and spirit, because we are fighting the devil.
I know it's not easy for you to be up here and talk as long as you have. You've been wonderful and generous with your time. I'm just going to ask you a few more things, just one word or a few words as you think about these. What is the one word that you have for the current state of American democracy?
I can't say it in church.
What's the bigger threat, disinformation or voter suppression?
Disinformation, because it leads to voter suppression.
Has corporate media been too cautious?
Way too cautious.
Is division between Black and immigrant communities engineered?
Absolutely.
Is white supremacy fringe or embedded?
Fringe or embedded?
Is it fringe or embedded?
Unfortunately, embedded.
Reform or structural design in policing?
I think you have to scrap the whole system and start over.
Is political violence being underestimated?
Very much underestimated, absolutely. I mean, January 6th.
What is the one thing that mainstream media gets wrong about Black voters?
That Black voters are structurally in love with the Democratic Party, and that it's not transactional. I think they think it's love when it's a transaction, because Black folks used to be Republicans when that was the way to get power. Black people understand power, and we want to be where we can have power.
5 years from now, is it a stronger or weaker democracy?
5 years?
5 years from now.
It might not be a democracy at all, good brother. I'm not sure it will be at all, to be honest. We're on the brink of not being a democracy, to be honest. So I'm not sure what will be. It really depends on what we do this year. And I hate it when people say, this is the most important election of your life. 2024 really was the most important election of our life. We lost the Center's election. So we are in a world of hurt. And if we don't do something dramatic this year, we may not have another real election again.
Look, tonight wasn't about outrage. It was about clarity. We talked about truth.
The baby said, I want to go home.
We talked about truth and how it's contested. We talked about power and how it's protected. And we talked about memory and why it's attacked. When journalists are discredited, it's about narrative control. When black history is restricted, it's about identity control. When voting access is challenged, it's about power control. When dehumanization resurfaces, it's about hierarchy. None of this is random. The question is not whether the moment is serious. It is. The question is whether we respond casually or strategically. Information without participation is trivia. Participation without organization is noise. But information, organized community, they shape history. Joy, thank you so much for your clarity and courage.
Thank you. Thank you, Rufus. Thank y'all very much.
First of all, give it one more time for Joy. Joy, Joy, thank you for your courage, your consistency, for demanding accountability. She got some books. Buy her books, and Joy, tell them how to listen to you for those that don't know.
You can just go on YouTube to The Joy Reid Show, or go to thejoyreidshow.com or joyandreid.com, any of those ways.
Stay strong, and know that you got a family on the south side of Chicago here that's got your back. We love you. We love you. Rufus, thank you so much for giving us your time tonight. Thank you for your wisdom and your voice in this city. We need you in this city right now. Thank you. Thank you, VON, for always supporting us and being our media partner. Lastly, let me just say this. This is not a time to be overwhelmed. This is not a time to be comfortable. This is not a time to be politically correct. This is not a time to be safe. This is a time to resist. I said, this is a time to resist. This is a time to fight. This is the time to expose evil wherever it raises its head. And this is the time to speak up every day, your workplace, the marketplace, every place you go, speak up about what's going on. Finally, this, on this Valentine's Day weekend, do not let this wicked, evil dictatorship rob you, rob us of our goodness, of our peace, and of our love. I know it looks ugly and it's rough, but I read the end of the book. Righteousness wins. Justice wins. Peace wins. And love wins. God bless you and be safe. Thank you for being here tonight. We love you.